I'm a doctor, but I can't think clearly anymore, so I can't do my job.
Long COVID causes debilitating cognitive issues.
I'm a runner, but now I can't walk 100 feet without getting exhausted.
Long COVID causes crippling fatigue that may last a lifetime.
I've lost friendships because of long COVID. I just don't feel well enough to see people.
People may look outwardly healthy, but they're suffering from a physical disorder that can upend lives.
Everything hurts. I can't even go out and play.
Up to 30% of COVID patients develop long COVID, and right now, there's no cure and little understanding.
I can't focus, I can't think straight, I can't keep a job.
So for those suffering daily, there's just one urgent question.
How long?
How long?
How long?
How long?
Until we solve long COVID. The Solve Long COVID initiative is bringing together patients, researchers, doctors, and drug developers to find answers now. To learn more and see how you can help, go to solvelongcovid.org.
Good afternoon and welcome. I'm Lisa McIntyre Shaw, Vice Chair of Programs at the Global Interdependence Center. We just viewed a public service announcement produced by the Solve Long COVID initiative and are glad to have shared it with this audience. On behalf of the Global Interdependence Center and Solve Long COVID initiative, welcome to today's executive briefing. As a reminder to our guests, this event is being recorded and the replay will be available through the GIC website. Today's executive briefing is a continuation of a program series designed by the Global Interdependence Center and Solve Long COVID initiative entitled Long COVID, Research, Policy, and Economic Impact. Throughout 2022, GIC and Solve has brought and will continue to bring in the future world-class immunologists, medical experts, policymakers, and economists to explore critical insights into defining, diagnosing, optimizing treatments, and healthcare policies for long COVID, while still analyzing its impact on the United States and global labor markets. I would like to personally extend our sincere thank you to David Kotok, longtime friend and supporter of the Global Interdependence Center. In 2021, David and the Solve Long COVID initiative offered a new gift to the Global Interdependence Center for funding, sponsorship, and logistical support for the Long COVID program series. We thank him for his generosity and dedication to researching and understanding post-infection diseases. At this time, I'm pleased to introduce our moderator, Emily Taylor. She is the Vice President of Advocacy and Engagement at Solve ME. Welcome, Emily.
Thank you so much, Lisa, for that kind introduction. And thank you so much to David Kotok and the GIC team for bringing us to our very last installment of this series, Long COVID and Technology. I'm so pleased to welcome our panelist, Dr. Miguel Antonatos, physician and founder at Text2MD, Dr. Harry Leeming, founder of CEO and of Visible, Andrew Rosenberg, the founder and CEO of Responsum Health, and welcoming back Dr. Amy Proal, a microbiologist and research team coordinator at the PolyBio Research Foundation. Those of you may recognize Amy and our Dr. Proal from our earlier, our first panel together, specifically on the state of the research of long COVID. So I'd like to invite Dr. Proal to come back with us for a quick 10-minute update to see what has changed in the past year and what have we learned in the area of long COVID that we didn't know a year ago. Just a reminder, Dr. Proal is a microbiologist who studies the molecular mechanisms by which bacterial, fungal, and viral pathogens dysregulate human gene expression, immunity, and metabolism. She is a member of a research team at Autoimmunity Research Foundation and has authored papers, written book chapters for many organizations in the Autoimmunity Network. She's also lectured at the NIH and included as a graduate from Georgetown University with a degree in biology and a Ph.D. in microbiology from Murdoch University in Australia. Dr. Proal, thank you once again for joining us. So excited to hear your presentation today.
Great. Thank you so much, Emily. And thank you to everyone who makes this series possible. It's been great. So to update people, I'm speaking for 10 minutes. And one good thing is that it would be impossible to encapsulate any kind of updates on long COVID in just 10 minutes because there have been many. So what I'm going to do is I'll share slides and just highlight the topic that our long COVID research team, I'm at PolyBio Research Foundation now, and we have started what we're calling the Long COVID Research Consortium. And what I'm going to describe is how our consortium studying long COVID has honed in on one particular area of interest in long COVID that relates to several others. So let me go ahead, share my screen. Can you see my screen? Great.
Yes.
Okay. So when I last was on here, which I think was about a year ago, I mentioned that these were the top scenarios for long COVID development that we were pursuing through our long COVID research program at PolyBio Research Foundation. And we had the possibility that patients with long COVID could suffer from organ injury after the acute infection. They could also potentially not fully clear the SARS-CoV-2 virus. In other words, a small amount of virus might clear from the blood or might no longer be able to be tested easily via conventional nasal swab testing, but might still persist in tissue or other areas or body sites of the patient. And that we also refer to as viral reservoir, a low level of virus. Other topics that we had mentioned as definitely impacting the long COVID disease process and requiring further study were reactivation of other persistent pathogens in patients with long COVID, for example, the herpes viruses, imbalance of the host microbiome, the ecosystems of organisms in and on us, especially in our guts and our mouths, also coagulation or clotting issues, autoantibody production that can get into autoimmune phenomena in patients with long COVID, but often via mimicry between pathogen proteins and host receptors and structures. And finally, disruption of signaling via the vagus nerve and brainstem. Now, with just 10 minutes, I want to hone in on topic number 2, which is the possible persistence of the virus in patients with long COVID, because that is the topic that our research teams are most studying in concert with the other topics I've just mentioned via a new consortium that we've started over the past year. I want to emphasize, as I did with my last presentation, that when you're looking for persistent virus, RNA, antigen, protein from any pathogen, SARS-CoV-2 or otherwise, it's very important to move beyond just studies of blood in patients and also collect, to the greatest extent possible, tissue samples that contain nerve from patients with the diagnosis. And that's because over time, as a general rule, persistent pathogens tend to clear from the blood. It's not a smart place to be. It's where the immune response can often be most robust. And in simple terms, they move into tissue or nerves where they can better hide. So that is important. And I want to emphasize this study, which was just published in Nature. It was a preprint last time that I was on this seminar. And now, just last week, this paper called SARS-CoV-2 Infection and Persistence in the Human Body and Brain at Autopsy was just published. This is one of the most important papers of the pandemic. And what this team showed, just in some, it's an extensive autopsy study, which was that in 6 cases where the tissue samples were obtained at least 31 days after onset of COVID symptoms, including in one subject who passed away 230 days after acute COVID, they were able to still find SARS-CoV-2 RNA and protein in multiple different body sites and tissues, including several regions of the brain. And they even identified subgenomic messenger RNA, which can be interpreted often as a marker of active viral replication in some of the tissue samples from these patients, including from one patient at day 76. So that study is also complemented in long COVID by this very important study that came out of Harvard Medical School. This is David Walt. And what his team did was use, and this really hones in on how important technology is in the way we're studying long COVID, because what he did is his team used a very sensitive assay, Simoa, that is much more sensitive, orders of magnitude more sensitive in detecting proteins created by the SARS-CoV-2 virus than many of the other conventional testing methods. And because of that innovative technology that his team developed, they identified in long COVID blood persistent circulating spike protein in up to 60% of the long COVID patients in the study. And this study needs to be replicated in other cohorts of long COVID patients. The methods could also be replicated, but it's a very interesting study because that's a high number of patients, again, with SARS-CoV-2 protein in the blood at least via when this technology is used. And what's important to think about there is I mentioned before that we think, and the autopsy studies suggest that the virus itself, the backbone, the RNA backbone of the virus, is likely in tissue. But what this study demonstrates, and this is a hypothesis that research teams, including our consortium, is pursuing, is that perhaps the protein, for example, the spike protein, can bud off the virus when it's in tissue and itself get into the blood, possibly in a little vesicle, maybe an exosome, because it would have to be protected by a membrane. So what may be possible when we're looking to study this topic of SARS-CoV-2 persistence in patients with long COVID is that even if the virus is in tissue, we might be able to measure the protein created by the virus in blood and use that to infer the possible persistence of the virus in sites that we can't get to in that particular study. And this could potentially be a biomarker for long COVID, circulating spike. And I think that the topic overall of SARS-CoV-2 persistence in patients with long COVID, and just generally that people may not be fully clearing the SARS-CoV-2 virus after acute infection. In other words, when you get infected with SARS-CoV-2, we have the worry that people may pass away from the acute infection, and that's a big problem. But what we're looking at here is also the second biggest public health concern for the SARS-CoV-2 virus, which is that if it does not fully clear from patients, that may be a central underlying driver of long COVID and a perpetuator of chronic problems in a great number of people who might harbor the virus. Again, this is what we're trying to study. This study is concerning. This is a team that found SARS-CoV-2 RNA, an antigen in the stool of 11 of 14 newborn mothers who had COVID that resolved 10 or more weeks before they gave birth, suggesting in utero transmission, in the womb transmission of the virus, an intestinal SARS-CoV-2 reservoir of the virus in the newborn babies. So when we're talking about the economic impact of long COVID and SARS-CoV-2 and this pandemic in general, we definitely need to consider that if we don't address the topic of SARS-CoV-2 persistence, we're looking at generations of people who will be potentially impacted. So also, I want to just quickly state that the spike protein, potentially not fully clearing from patients with long COVID, is tied to the microclots that many people have now understood are another line of top research in long COVID. This team at South Africa, Ricia Pretorius and Doug Kell, have shown fibrin amyloid microclots, little deposits of fibrin and amyloid in the blood of patients with long COVID. You can see some of them on this slide in a way. And what they've shown, this was a study that they did, is that if they take the S1 protein from SARS-CoV-2 and basically drop it into blood, these clots form. So the topic of SARS-CoV-2 persistence unifies to a point some of the other things we see in the disease, because, for example, if people don't fully clear the virus, then they don't clear spike, and spike appears. And we need more research on this to be able to see the fibrin amyloid microclots that are also being increasingly identified in patients with long COVID. And what's cool about this is to study this further. My colleague, David Petrino, who's amazing, helped Ricia Pretorius travel from South Africa first to Mount Sinai, where he's working with an incredible cohort of long COVID patients, then to Yale, where our amazing collaborator, Kiko Osaki, is working, also doing some microclot research, and then to Harvard Medical School, where this is a group of different investigators that Ricia worked with, but she did not stop. Training in microclot analysis, also platelet activation, neutrophil activity, correlating a lot of the topics that we're studying also in long COVID with the microclot analyses. And one of the cool things is that this lab, the lab that this picture is taken in, was Daniel Arimia's lab. Talk about a lab that's innovating technology. His lab creates microfluidic devices that can, in real time, capture the activity of immune cells. And so what we're doing is we're taking some of the standard microclot techniques and innovating them in this lab with some of the newer technologies like the microfluidics. And this really shows what collaboration, active collaboration, can do in long COVID. And then what we've also done is we've formed The Long COVID Research Consortium is a scientific collaboration to rapidly and comprehensively study long COVID with a focus centrally on viral reservoir. And these are just some of the amazing investigators that are part of our consortium. Thanks to a very generous donation from a private donor, we are able to move quite a few consortium projects that we're moving forward right now with these incredible teams. And the priorities of our consortium are the following. We're doing tissue biopsy studies, so lung tissue. We have a large study on long COVID lung tissue, intestinal tissue, lymph node aspirate, where we're able to understand if SARS-CoV-2 and a variety of other immune and genetic changes are happening in tissue samples. Then autopsy, further autopsy, and even imaging studies that can find components of the virus via imaging in a scanner, some of those being incredible technologies. If there's a time to bring back Tim Hendrick at UCSF is one of the people who's doing that. Then also blood-based biomarker studies like what I mentioned with the spike protein, impact on microbiome and other pathogens that we correlate into these studies, and then downstream consequences on vagus nerve and all those other topics I mentioned. So we've honed in a bit now with our approach, and this is where we stand. A huge amount of research is moving forward. And really what brings our consortium together is that most of the projects push the boundaries of how cutting edge technologies can be used in the study of chronic disease. And our goal is to use these technologies, begin in long COVID, and then even iterate them into cancer, other diseases, ME/CFS for sure, and even the aging process. There's a lot of iteration that can happen. So that's where we stand now. With that, I will unshare my screen.
Thank you, Dr. Proal. Wow, what a fascinating update since we were last together about how these technologies and these, especially the viral reservoir theory, have moved forward with more evidence and more understanding. Thank you so much. With that, I'm excited to bring the rest of our panel into the conversation. First, I'd like to introduce Harry Leeming, the founder and CEO of Visible, an activity tracking platform for long COVID and ME/CFS. Harry has lived experience of long COVID and previously worked as an early stage technology startups and a Formula One engineer. While first and foremost, Visible is building an activity tracking platform for illness, what's really driving the Visible team is the need to increase our collective understanding of invisible illness. So thank you, Harry. Welcome, and so happy to have you. Next, we have Dr. Miguel Antonatos, who completed his medical school at the Universidad Autónoma de Guadalajara in Guadalajara, Mexico, and completed his residency at Morristown Memorial Hospital in Morristown, New Jersey, an affiliate of the Mount Sinai and ECAN School at Mount Sinai in New York City. He is a board-certified internal medicine physician with more than 13 years of experience in hospital medicine, and most importantly, the physician founder of the telemedicine company Text2MD, currently serving in 32 states that has been actively involved in helping COVID-19 patients throughout the pandemic through telemedicine services. And last, but definitely not least, we have Andrew Rosenberg, a highly respected health policy expert and innovator, having founded Responsum Health, a groundbreaking patient-focused IT startup, and co-founded Thorn Run Partners, a leading Washington, D.C.-based government relations firm. In addition to his role as CEO of Responsum Health and founding partners Thorn Run, as if that wasn't busy enough, Mr. Rosenberg also served for 6 years on the Patient-Centered Outcomes Research Institute Advisory Board for Clinical Effectiveness and Decisions Science. Mr. Rosenberg is a graduate of Amherst College with a law degree and a master's in urban environmental planning from University of Virginia. So thank you all to our amazing panel. So excited to have you today. Let's just dive right in with our fireside chat portion of our program, where I'm just going to fire off some questions and invite you all to respond. The first question I'd like to direct to Andrew. So first of all, your work in technology has really focused on community and information sharing, which as you know, we've talked before, I find fascinating and find so valuable. So I really want to ask you, how has technology brought the long COVID community to get together, and what has your work done to facilitate that?
Thank you, Emily. I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you for hosting such a wonderful discussion. Well, as amazing as the use of technology is and fundamental to the research that Dr. Proal was describing, technology also serves a really important role in helping patients and people today who have long COVID, who are suffering from a lack of knowledge and support and awareness, because it's such a new and complicated condition that millions of people in this country are struggling with the effects of long COVID without having the sort of traditional means of getting information. So What we've built at Responsum Health, Responsive for Long COVID, is an app that is available for free to anybody who thinks that they or a loved one is struggling with a symptom from long COVID, but doesn't really know how to get answers to their questions about, do I have this? What is it that I have? What can I do to treat it? Where can I go for help? Needless to say, it's a very confused and frustrated community of patients. And what we do on our app is we provide a vetted, trustworthy flow of article summaries that we've culled from across responsible sources on the internet and made it so that it's searchable, community rated, and savable and the like. Put it into a news feed, a dynamic news feed that that individuals can sort of get in their app to keep up to date and search for information that they're seeking, and then package that in an app that also includes a vibrant but moderated community chat where patients, we shouldn't say patients, people who are struggling with long COVID can provide peer support to each other, help to answer questions, and as much as anything, Emily, provide support and a sympathetic ear, because so many of the people out there struggling with long COVID today are disbelieved in the workplace, they're disbelieved by people in their community. There's a tremendous amount of sort of mental stress that accompanies a long COVID condition that is just not present in any other illnesses today.
Absolutely, Andrew. Thank you so much, and so thrilled to hear about the work that you're doing, and especially the powerful community sharing and community engagement components. As you know, I'm a big fan of anything that brings the community together to be able to support on a peer-to-peer basis. So thank you so much. Next, I'd like to transition to Dr. Antonatos, who has been working in healthcare delivery using technology through telemedicine to actually change how healthcare is delivered at the patient level. So Dr. Antonatos, if you could take a moment to talk about how your app has changed the delivery of healthcare and how you've been using specifically Text2MD to help long COVID patients.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much, Emily. Hello, everyone. My name is Miguel Antonatos, the founder of the company Text2MD. So as Emily mentioned, we provide telemedicine services via text messaging. Since the pandemic, we have been able to help patients manage their symptoms, the resolution. We have been treating mostly acute COVID and long COVID patients as well. We have a holistic approach, a multi-system approach based on the COVID long haul. Is basically it's a syndrome which affects multiple organs. So we use a holistic approach for these patients. I just want to show some of my slides so patients are able to be familiar with the technology and how patient may approach us and what we track as far as symptoms with this application. Will be screen. So this is Text2MD app. So this is a big problem. Many patients have becoming very similar to Sarah. She had a mild COVID infection in 2021. She developed symptoms consistent with chronic fatigue, brain fog symptoms. She had been going to her primary care doctor initially for these symptoms. Most of their blood work, laboratory, and imaging has been normal. She has a very busy lifestyle. She's unsure of what insurance can cover. There is a lot of shortage of providers and anticipated predicted shortage of providers over years. So she has been having issues trying to find out a solution for her problems. Going to the doctor can be difficult and expensive sometimes, and there is a risk of infection within the hospital. So the solution we brought up is a simple mobile app. Patients can text us, and also we offer video consultation for patients which share this modality. This is a help with patient as very time efficient, affordable, transparent. Our pricing is very competitive, way less than many of practitioners. There's no risk for an infection. It can be done anywhere, any location. The text feature is able to patient communicate with doctors. Any environment. It can be a noisy place. They can be traveling. They can be anywhere. This is just a chat communication, and that's what we initiate the consultation with the patients. We also integrated a symptom tracking, food diary, as many patients started developing food intolerance after a long COVID infection. We evaluate metrics, like for example, oxygen levels. We evaluate weight of the patient. We evaluate BMI. We make sure patients are optimizing the overall health. And the chat feature, where the patient can communicate with us anytime. If they have any issues along the treatment, any side effects, or any questions, we want to know improvements. So we keep engaged with patients along the way during this treatment protocol. So the text to MD app is instant access to get access to healthcare provider, complete HIPAA compliant application. As I mentioned, convenient to use from anywhere. We have a streamlined communication with a healthcare provider. In this situation, will be a physician. And we see not only COVID long haul, but we see other diseases or illness. We are primary care, we see orient care, mental health, and we specialize in functional medicine as well, which is something that has been helping a lot of patients with. So this is just a feature of the app. We have been integrated with a healthy app. So some of the features, we have the food diary, activity tracker, metrics. A patient can write notes like a journal in case along the way. We have the chat feature, as mentioned, as very easy. Patient just click chat and communicate with the doctor right away. We also patient able to attach laboratories report, prior physician notes, any pictures or video they can share with us. We also have integrated with wearables. We have monitor blood pressure, oxygen levels. In case patients have those devices, they're able to integrate with the app, and we're able to track vitals this way, get additional metrics. And if support isn't limited, patients, they start a program, they can chat with us many times, every day. We want to know, we want to hear about the patient, how they're progressing. If they're not progressing well, we need to help out additionally. We also offer a patient web portal where we keep all the patient notes. They can come, review their notes, supplements, look at the labs results as well. So a little glimpse of the application. So just showing about the food diary. When the patient can select, either they can take a picture of what they're eating, or they can just tag what they were eating, and then we will review what they're eating. Usually we try patient to eat a low histamine diet. Also, some patients benefit from a diet that is considered keto diet, that is helpful for the mitochondria. So we're trying to see what patients are kind of triggering, or what if they're following the diet that we recommended. We have the metric, so it will show, this is showing everything that we are interested in this situation. We want to show patient temperature, blood pressure is good, they're sleeping well, having some sort of activity during the day, and if patient has been overweight, we're trying to optimize their health, trying to get them into a better BMI. So this is also beneficial as far of any other application, not COVID long haul. So right now we're focusing in these metrics, as this is something that affecting a lot of patients. We have activity tracking. We usually look for mostly light activity, and this tracking, we ask patients to walk, give a little walk around the block, walk the dog, things like that, little by little, increasing activity. When patients overdo some sort of activity that may increase histamine, patient may have relapses. So we want to see what is causing any relapses or their symptoms. So this patient have this feature to let us know time. As well, as I mentioned, the symptom tracker, as we have seen as far as COVID long haul, have at least 200 symptoms that we have been seeing a patient reported, but various kind of symptoms. So we have this easier for patient to click any day if they're having any symptoms. They can type a comment as well. We have the journal diary, let us know how they're feeling. anything they want to comment to the doctor, we will see that communication, and we can integrate with several devices as well. This patient is able to integrate, have one of these devices able to integrate very easily. So just to explain a little bit about patient experience with Text2ND. So patient usually reaches out to a website, it's text2nd.com. They communicate usually with text messaging, and we offer a continuous text message or video call. Usually preferable initial consultation, we prefer a video call to get to know the patients and get a more comprehensive approach. Also, we do the evaluation. We recommend initial treatment based on their symptoms. If they have blood work from before, if they don't have laboratory testing, we recommend laboratory testing as well. We follow with these patients every month in a consultation, a video call consultation, and we repeat that laboratory blood work usually in 6 months treatment or whenever the symptoms improve or resolve, just to compare how the laboratories have been improved. In the future, we're going to be offering health coaching as well, app integration. Currently, we have affiliates. We offer a discount this patient from full script supplements that they would require in order to get most results. We also offer online pharmacies. We are affiliated with online pharmacies that were all the 50 states. The reason we need sometimes the online pharmacies is some of the medications that we prescribe not able to get in retail pharmacy. For example, some of these medications need to be compounded, like the low dose naltrexone, and we offer the option of the online pharmacy, and patient can use, we send the medication to the patient location anywhere they're located. So this is part of the blood work. We recommend initial evaluation for the patient. Most of the patients come with a basic laboratory blood work. They come with a CBC, chemistry, with a liver function panel. Sometimes they come with a CRP and a thyroid test. However, we recommend patients to get a more comprehensive blood work depending on their symptoms, depending on their presentation. And if they don't have any laboratory prior to see us, we usually encourage patients to make get some laboratory testing. Some of these laboratory testing as well may include functional medicine testing. If everything has been evaluated, has been normal with other providers, we usually try to focus in organic metabolomic, organic acid testing. We have noticed a lot of abnormalities. Mostly is due to some mitochondrial disbalance, some nutritional disbalance, a lot of precursor of amino acid disbalance as well. We have seen a lot of patients not absorbing well the nutrients, and this could be one of the reasons patients have been deficient key elements. As well, we check as well cytokine levels depending of the presentation, depending we want to see if there is a increased cytokine levels in the body or not. So we need to make sure these treatment approaches are working as far as the inflammation, as far as dropping the cytokine levels. So Text2ND definitely is convenient. Patient they can text us anytime. We offer the video call. As well, patient can select any their doctors and stay with the same doctor. Continue to care is very important with the long COVID management. We offer most category healthcare. Most of these patients with chronic long COVID may have another chronic condition that may be exacerbated, and we may need to follow up this condition, make sure it's improving. Other group of patients, long COVID, are completely healthy patients before having the infection. They were actually patients that are like athletes, young patients. So we see different categories of patients. With our app, we have flexibility. We have API integration. So we're going to be adding in the future more features to the app in order to track patient symptoms and other wearable devices integration as well. With everything that we do, we offer patient discounts. We discount at least 20% discount with the supplements. We find pharmacists able to facilitate the medication cost. And our consultation is very affordable, as I mentioned. This is one of the issues I see most of the time, patients not seeking help with COVID long haul. They have been going to other providers. They have been telling them everything is normal. They discouraged to seek help. However, with what we do here, we minimize the cost of the patient. What we want definitely patient to get better. This is a company that definitely that's our goal. This is that's what we mentioned to the patient. We provide you discount. If you don't able to afford the price of the consultation, we'll be able to help you out in some sort of plans. But definitely, this is something that patients need. They have been looking around. Some service similar to this, and unfortunately, it's lacking of resources around, and we have been able to help out these patients with this modality of telemedicine. So just a little bit just talking about the COVID. Well, we see there is approximately 650 million patients have in the world with COVID. Estimated long haul will be 296. We have been treated successfully 17,000 patients since the starting of this program. So our milestone, as I mentioned, 17,000 patients. We started with functional medicine program in January. We have been affiliated with Fullscript and online pharmacy, trying to get patient discounts. Currently in 32 states. Our goal 2023 will be covering all the 50 states. We have been achieved an award this year, Best Functional Medicine Award, online functional medicine from Gold and Farm Award. It's a company in the UK. And we're going to be releasing a new app with new features in the next couple of weeks. It's going to be released iOS version, and we're going to be releasing next year. This is 2023 March beyond. We expand to 50 days, increase our social media exposure, and we're going to be completing our Android app March 2023. We're going to be integrating, and we're in conversation with online coaching that offer telemedicine as well, able to support this patient along the way. We also going to be providing some free webinars for healthcare providers as well. Thank you so much. This is our information, our email address, and website.
Thank you so much. If you could leave that on the screen for just a moment longer, because I got some questions from Albert and others in the audience that were looking for that contact information. So just noting that on the screen there for everybody. With that, thank you so much, Dr. Antonatos. That was fascinating. Great work that you are all doing at the Text to MD team. Thank you so much for sharing that exceptional service delivery. We're going to transition over to Harry now. Thank you for being so patient, Harry. So excited to learn more about Visible and the amazing data tracking challenges that you're tackling with your work. So to really tackle the amazing work that you're doing, I just wanted to have a two-part question. The first is, in previous sessions here as part of the series, we've looked at the data challenges of COVID, specifically long COVID, that the symptoms are hard to quantify, that in the research space that we have trouble measuring some of these metrics, and we're learning how to do it, and the technology's come a long way. So what I'd like to learn from you, Harry, and the work that Visible is doing, is how have you tackled those data challenges? And secondly, how do you feel, or how have you used technology to empower patients to manage their own illness on the day-to-day level?
Awesome. Thanks, Emily. So yeah, at Visible, we're building a platform to help people to pace their activity and to manage their condition. And as you mentioned, it's obviously very difficult to capture good data across this patient population, especially with these varying symptoms and the different levels of severity. And what we're doing at Visible is really trying to move away from capturing sort of manual entry subjective data to passive objective data, as much as possible. And really the best way to do this is to use wearable technology, and wearable devices allow us to capture some really important metrics. So things like heart rate variability, postural data, and actually we can get this at really high accuracy now. The technology is there and real time too. And then we can use that data to start building, rather than biomarkers, like these digital biomarkers to measure things like dysautonomia or POTS. And this technology is technology that's readily available. It's really just the software that just hasn't been applied to this area. So most of the stuff is done in the context of fitness rather than illness. And so by using the wearable technology along with illness-focused software like what we're building at Visible, we can actually make make this data like widely available to people so we can help them to manage their illness better. But I think also importantly, not just help them manage their own condition, but also use that data and share it with clinicians or with research groups. So like really giving patients the power to help move our understanding of these conditions forwards. So one example is we've got our first study, in-app study, where users can go to our research section and opt in to share their data directly with Imperial College London, who are interested in looking at the impact of the menstrual cycle on symptoms. So really using wearable technology to help move forwards our understanding of these conditions and help move the research forwards along the way.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Harry. And just one quick question. Where can people find out or get access to your app? Because is it open source?
Yeah, so anyone can download the app. You can go and get it from the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store. We currently have a free app available that is in beta that we're working with the community to build, and we will have our wearable integration available early next year. And you can sign up to the waitlist for that from our website, which is makevisible.com.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. So really, truly 3 different aspects of technology that are being impacted by your great companies and your work, and how that serves patients in 3 different access points. So I'd love to kind of look at that at a holistic way. Andrew, I wanted to swing back to you. So when we look at the role of information technology and kind of all of these different elements, how do you feel that the community and the information provided by other patients fits into these different roles?
So Emily, and I'll invite your colleague Colleen to share some survey data that we put on is based on about 3,000 of our patient responses. What we're looking at here is some of us on this call with some phenomenal ways to use technology to gain data, right? And gaining data to drive the research agenda is really important. But my experience has been that if you just sort of reach out to patients and you say, hey, give me your data, they'll be like, actually, I would, but there are like 14 other things I really need to do that are more important to me today because I'm struggling with a really tough illness. And it's one of those things where sort of the theory behind Responsum's approach is to build relationships by providing patients with information and community that they need. It's a free app. It's really engaging. The idea is that they're using it multiple times a month to get information that they need to share support and benefit from support that they need to be shared. And then we can go and passively learn from them in a different way in some regards of what Harry's doing. The wearables is a phenomenal tool, and it's absolutely a direction we may go at some point. But right now, what we're able to track is things like, what are people talking about, asking about in their chats? What articles are they searching? Are they reading? What topics are they searching for? And that helps to drive a really robust analysis about what individuals who are struggling with these challenges, what symptoms they're searching for, what are their challenges, what are they looking for help? And what I've thrown up, and so that's very important in terms of the data that we collect. But the flip side and kind of the mission of Responsum at its forefront is to support people who today have that condition in a way that helps them better understand, get their brains around, get their bodies around their challenge, and to better understand. So one of the things that we've done here is to ask 5 questions of individuals who both download the app and then 3 to 4 weeks later. And the questions ask things like, how confident do you feel about your general understanding of living with long COVID? How confident do you feel about knowing your treatment options? How confident are you that the information that you have access to allows you to make the right healthcare decisions? How confident are you in your ability to ask the right questions when you get a couple minutes with your doctor? And then finally, how confident do you feel about how mentally prepared you are to deal with the challenges of long COVID? And with each of these, and I won't go through the results, but I'd love you to post them to this webinar. We see remarkable improvements, often doubling or tripling the number of individuals who in just 3 or 4 weeks of having access to information in this format, to go from saying whether I'm absolutely, I don't feel like I have any confidence at all. I don't know where to go for questions. I don't know what my options are, to swing wildly in just 3 to 4 weeks of getting provided information in a way that's understandable, that's usable, that's sticky, right? That appears in their inbox, it appears on their app. And so for us, a lot of our mission is to help individuals through technology who today have questions that they need answered. And until they get those questions answered, they're just not sleeping very well at night. And they don't know how to go about their day. So that's sort of our use of technology, Emily, in trying to support the lives of people with long COVID.
That is fantastic. And as you know, we've worked on those partner articles before, and they are so helpful. We've heard from our patient community how valuable they can be. To see the raw data on how that's really improving lives is so fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. I'd like to bring one last question for all the panelists, and then we'll switch into a couple of the audience questions. So looking at kind of how has the research field reacted to these long COVID technologies? We've heard 3 great examples from different apps that empower the community, like Responsum, that facilitate data collection, like Visible, and that streamline medical care, like Text to MD. But how can these technologies accelerate long COVID research, or are they changing the way we look at healthcare more generally because of the technologies that long COVID has brought to bear? Oh, did I stump you all?
Who was that for, Emily? Anyone in particular?
I can jump in on that. So I think that as scientists studying long COVID, the more data that we have, concrete data on patient clinical symptoms or markers, or that we can correlate with other findings from our research, it's really important. So what we do now is we actually use artificial intelligence approaches that can correlate a huge number of different biomarkers or measured data points in analysis. And so what we can do is, if we get good data on, for example, when some of these apps are collecting, sometimes via wearables is really an interesting possibility. Then we can correlate that data with whether or not the person still had SARS-CoV-2 RNA in their tissue sample, right? So the more data that and then we can mine that data, we can go back and look backwards and say, people who had more respiratory symptoms ended up having more antigen or problems in this. So we can go, having the technology at the outset when we design a study, a lot of which can be augmented by the types of apps that were just discussed on this Zoom, allows us to do retrospective analysis where we can find a lot of correlations that may allow us then to move forward with more understanding with the data.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Amy. That's so critical to that integration component. Harry, it looked like you wanted to jump in there. Did you have something you wanted to share?
I mean, I was more going to sort of agree with Andrew, sort of mentioned it earlier about by providing value to patients by helping them understand their conditions or find information. You end up collecting this really important data set. And, that's similar to what we're doing, where we're, helping patients to manage their condition and really providing value to them. Helping them see trends in their illness, what's making them better, what's making them worse. But the end result is that we actually end up with a really powerful, comprehensive data set from which we can build, these illness-specific algorithms. We can spot patterns using data science, and we can collaborate with groups like Amy. And so that's like, for us, our end goal with Visible is going in that direction.
Yeah, and for us, it's really cool that your app is incorporates a lot of patient feedback in what you're measuring. So you actually end up measuring what's most relevant and realistic and actually happening to patients. I think that's really important, so that we end up actually analyzing those really logical things.
Absolutely. So this is another question to the whole panel, so everyone feel free to jump in. But in this conversation so far, we've talked a lot about technology, about apps, about wearables, about research, about data, but there's one arguably the biggest player that we have not mentioned at all, and that is the pharmaceutical industry. Why haven't we talked about pharma? Or maybe more specifically, why hasn't pharma gotten involved? And what is needed to spearhead those kind of large-scale investments?
I mean, happy to jump in here. I mean, I I think one of the biggest issues is sort of a lack of a recognized biomarker. Like that continues to be a barrier. Whether it's like identifying cohorts of people with long COVID or being able to measure progress, not having an objective way of doing that still is I think one of the barriers for pharma joining. So when these conditions differ so much from person to person, like being able to find some hard numbers to measure these conditions is really crucial.
I agree.
I'm sorry, I'll just add from my perspective, which is maybe unschooled, it is frustrating because pharma really, went to work fast on vaccines, right? I mean, when this pandemic hit, unprecedented coordination, and the federal government played a very important role as well in bringing companies together, in setting the mission, in getting commitments. It was all hands on deck. We don't have that sense of urgency around long COVID. And beyond that, in addition to the lack of a biomarker, as Harry was describing, from my perspective, and this is what I see through the Responsum for long COVID community, and just the comments and the interest from people with the condition, it is so hard to pinpoint as a singular condition. It has so many different manifestations, so many different symptoms that potentially implicate many, many different molecules that may already exist in the libraries of research labs and of pharmaceutical companies, but it's almost overwhelming because it's not a singular, or it doesn't strike me as sort of being a singular challenge. And as a result, I just get the sense, and I'm sort of frustrated because from my perspective, pharmaceutical companies, when they get involved in a given condition and they want to go after a disease and declare war on a disease, they bring to bear a lot of resources, including support for patients in that community. And that sort of support and that sort of interest then means, quite frankly, support and resources to organizations like mine that can provide a free resource for patients and for their loved ones and caregivers that are struggling with the condition. Right now, I think what we're all seeing, and the purpose of this call and of your organization, Emily, is to bring greater attention and focus on long COVID as a national and international crisis with millions of victims today and perhaps long into tomorrow. But it's very much, in my opinion, lacking in resources to fight the fight. And part of those resources are pharmaceutical industry support for the research, as well as the development of drugs, as well as the support for the people who have the condition. It's desperately needed.
Yeah. Definitely agree with what I was saying. Definitely what we've seen as part of our experience treating this patient with long COVID is a manifestation of different organs being affected COVID. The longer those patients they don't seek help or sort of treatment, they will progress worse. There is other organs that are going to start failing. Seeing patients with a lot of hormonal imbalance, like for example, adrenal fatigue. This patient, this is long COVID, is a huge stressor for the body. Having this stressor for a prolonged time definitely is going to be affecting other organs. And I see definitely, the pharma companies have been focusing mostly in preventive measures and acute treatments. They still are trying to develop vaccines. They're still focusing in vaccine and prevention. And it should be a focus as well in the long COVID. This is a real illness. It's affecting millions of people. Definitely, the vaccine developing was supported by government. So this is something that probably is the government start supporting a little bit more these efforts in order to find solution for the long COVID issues. Definitely, this is going to be helpful for the pharma companies. So far, I believe this is going to be a multi-drug treatment approach based on different mechanisms of long COVID, or it could be a single drug targeting different mechanisms, molecules. So it's gonna be something that definitely it will require a lot of support, only for government.
Yeah, and I think on our end, we actually have seen pharma come to us, at least in some capacity, and be interested in pursuing long COVID clinical trials. For example, with just even the National Institute of Health, NIH, the focus on persistence of SARS-CoV-2 in viral reservoir and the clarity that the research community, at least our teams coming in on that topic, sort of as a first and foremost topic of importance in long COVID, I think did provide some clarity, not just our team, but with a number of groups to the pharmaceutical industry, because NIH is supporting a Paxlovid clinical trial in long COVID. And I do believe that David Walt with the spike protein study with that very innovative Samoa method for identifying spike is involved in that study. And my guess, I don't know enough about it, is that it comes down to what Harry says, is that on the pharmaceutical industry side, the more that they can measure something concrete. So in other words, you can measure in a clinical trial before and after the intervention, you can measure symptoms. And that's one way that you can ascertain improvement. But if you can measure, for example, spike protein before let's say an antiviral like Paxlovid is given, and then afterwards, that's a much more concrete measurement, really. So the more studies that come in, this is why research is so important. We have to fast track the research, because that allows more biomarkers that can be used in the clinical trials to be identified. That gives the pharmaceutical industry confidence to come in on those fronts. And I think that the only thing we need to also consider, though, for example, when a Paxlovid clinical trial is run, is that I agree with Miguel that likely eventually treatments for long COVID will, like HIV, for example, end up being cocktails of different drugs in different patients in personalized approaches. There's unlikely to be one drug that simply works for everyone with long COVID. So we're going to need to understand how, even when one therapeutic is trialed, how it can be best combined with others. And so we're already beginning from a research angle to look at that. One of our amazing researchers from University of Pennsylvania that's part of our consortium is already using organoid models, so tissue models of lung tissue, intestinal tissue, blood vessel tissue, infecting them with SARS-CoV-2 and then using different therapeutics on them in the labs in combination to already be able to study in that capacity the way that different drugs may be able to be positioned to clinical trials. And when that data is hopefully published, again, this keeps bringing the pharmaceutical industry in with the confidence needed to come in and actually do the trial.
Absolutely fantastic. Thank you for those points, and what a key message to take away for pharma. So we have 5 minutes left. So just really quickly, just 1 minute each, if we go quickly around. This is our last session of the year and of this program, and I wanted to end on a hopeful note. So I wanted to ask each of you, as you look forward at the future of long COVID, what gives you hope? Whether it's technology, whether it's healthcare, whether it's the scientific progress, what gives you hope about the treatment for long COVID in the future? And what makes you think we can solve this? Andrew, is it okay if I pick on you first?
Sure. Well, although I'm going to say that Dr. Proal gave me the most hope today, hearing about the tremendous. I mean, I think that on the patient platform side, where I reside, I think that it's really important to provide help and support to people who today have it. But I do think that their hope is that Dr. Proal and her colleagues are going to be successful, and hope is so important. So many of these patients that we deal with today, they don't have hope because they're not getting accurate diagnoses, not because their doctors aren't trying, but because there just aren't a lot of answers right now for people with long COVID, quite frankly. And so my hope for next year is that Dr. Proal comes back in a year from now with even more progress, and that we've got more answers for these patients.
I love it. I love it. Dr. Antonatos.
Yeah, absolutely. So definitely we see progress in long COVID. Definitely when we started, we were unclear what was causing symptoms. I mean, we have more research. There's evolving treatment options as well. There is more groups, supportive groups for patients with long COVID. Definitely, so that we're in the right track and the right direction. However, I would like this to be a little bit more speed up with major support for next year. However, definitely I see support, I see more groups forming, and more physicians as well trying to understand how long COVID affect their patients, able to try to find out a way to help them as well. So definitely we've seen this has been definitely getting much better than it was before. Most of the healthcare practitioners were very unclear what was causing this mechanism. We have theories now, we have research now, and we keep adding more research every time. So this is something that I'm very optimistic that we're gonna be able to have more support next year, and definitely way more research. I appreciate all the panelists as well, and here they're doing fantastic work as well, and we are all together on this, and we're together for our patients.
Couldn't agree more. Harry, would you like to share?
Yeah, I mean, I think like Amy, we've also seen this early interest from pharma, and so I do hold out hope there, and I know that things are moving in the background, even if it's not always that publicly known. But I think also there's a good point that even just like the existence of companies like Visible show this has never really happened for ME, and for this now to exist, I think it really demonstrates that there is this real change that is happening. So I remain very optimistic about the future.
Thank you, Harry. And Amy, you want to wrap us up? Final thoughts?
Sure. I'm actually very optimistic and hopeful moving forward. I think that what has really been amazing for me to watch is just scientists from different institutions in different places across the globe coming together. And honestly, I've never seen sharing data so openly. Ideas, we meet every Wednesday with our consortium, and almost every meeting, someone comes up with a new idea, a trade of samples, something else. It's that kind of understanding. The researchers at least understand that this is an emergency. Everyone is sharing and innovating together. And I think that energy matters. And I think that is what gives me most hope, is the true collaboration of the investigators who are moving work on this forward.
Beautifully said. Absolutely love it. I couldn't agree more. Thank you so much, Dr. Antonatos, Dr. Proal, Harry, Andrew. Thank you for a fascinating discussion and for spending time with our Global Interdependence Center and Solve ME communities today. What a wonderful finale to our series on long COVID research, policy, and economic impact. Before we close, just a reminder that a replay of today's executive briefing will be available on the GIC website tomorrow, also available on the Solve ME YouTube channels. I'd like to take a moment to once again thank David Kotok for his generous gift in funding and supporting this long COVID program series throughout the entire year. If you'd like to see more episodes or more or past events, please go to the GIC website. We can also show a summary of the in-person conference in May. I also want to send a special thanks to our program sponsor, Responsum for Long COVID, a supporter of this ongoing series. And as we conclude, we encourage you to take 30 seconds to respond to our audience survey. Your feedback is so important to us, letting us know how we can improve. And lastly, have a wonderful holiday break. I hope you all have wonderful times with your families and friends and get the rest and recovery you so rightly deserve. Thank you for your attention and joining us in this year-long series. We'd love to have you. And thank you again. Have a wonderful holiday season, and we'll see you in the new year. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.